Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Samich Zayin Amud Beis. Starting Daf Samich Zayin Amud Aleph. 4 lines from the bottom. Rabbi Shimon taught us in regard to sending those who are tamei out of the machane. The pasuk states, "Vayishalchu min hamachane, kol tzarua, v'kol zov, v'kol tamei lo nefesh." So he asks, we already know that somebody who's tamei lo nefesh, who has contact with the mace, he has to leave the machane. If so, that which is a zov and that which is a mitzvah are more chamor. Why does it have to state it? Ella must be teaching me that the zov has to leave not only the machane shechina, like the tamei mace, he has to also leave the machane levia. Why mention then the mitzvah? The mitzvah is more stringent than the zov. Must be teaching us that the zov has to leave the machane levia, but the mitzvah has to leave all 3 machanos. The machane shechina, the machane levia, as well as the machane Yisrael. Says the Gemara, Lamo mai chumrei dezov mitmei meis. The Gemara asks and challenges Rabbi Shimon's premise and says, where do we know that the mitzvah is more chamor than the tmei meis? Sorry, where do we know that the zov is more tamei than the tmei meis? Shekain tumas yoitze alov migufoi. Because the zov, he becomes tamei with that which emits from his body. Ask the Gemara, Adarabba, I'll show you a chumrah with tamei mace, which does not exist by the zov. Tamei mace, chamur, shekain toon hazor, shlishi v'shvi. The one who is tamei mace, he has to be sprinkled by the Efer Hapara on the 3rd and the 7th day to become purified. That we don't see when it comes to the zov. Omar Kro, therefore the Gemara says, tamei. Why did the Torah have to say not just tamei ve'kol tamei, not just that he is going to be impure, but all those who are impure, l'rabois tamei shoretz, to include somebody who has a tamei of being in contact with the sheretz. One of the 8 shrotzim, which is a dead carcass of one of those 8 shrotzim, he comes in contact with it, he becomes tamei. That is being included when it says the kol tamei, v'zov chamor mitamei sheretz, and yet the zov is more chamor than the tamei sheretz. So when the Torah says the kol tamei lo nefesh, and kol tamei comes to include the sheretz, the one who is in contact with the sheretz, so therefore we see that if that's so, that the one who is in contact with the sheretz has to leave the machane, then kol shekain, we know that the tamei zov has to leave the machane because zov is more chamor than sheretz. Ask the Gemara, my chumrei, where do we see that the zov is more chamor than what comes in contact with the sheretz? Kedah moran, like we said before. In regards to the zov, we stated that the zov becomes tamei for that which is yoitze alav migufoi. Ask the Gemara, adirabo. Sheretz chamor shekain mitame ba'oines. Sheretz is more chamor than zov because somebody who comes in contact with the sheretz, it's even ba'oines when not knowing that he comes in contact with the sheretz, not wanting to come in contact with the sheretz, and nonetheless he becomes tamei. When it comes to zov, if he becomes tamei as a result of overeating or because of a choili, he does not then become a zov. That's not considered to be a zov, even though there's an emission from his body. Amre, they said, Amud Beis, Ki hai gavna zov nami tamuye metame ba'oines k'davuna. The Gemara explains that we find even by zov having also the type of tuma of oines, even when it comes from something else like overeating or from an illness. Dom Rav Huna, as Rav Huna explained, Re'iyah rishoina shel zov metame ba'oines. The first re'iyah of a zov, even if it comes again from something else like overeating or from a choili, it also makes him tamei. In other words, when it comes to the ziva, there are 3 different types of zov. There's the zov who sees 3 times, either the same day or 3 consecutive times in 2 days or 3 days. He has to then have 7 clean days and then bring a carbon. If he only sees twice, however, he has to also then count 7 clean days, but he doesn't have to bring a carbon. Here we're talking about that which is only tamei for 1 day until nightfall. So as long as he is then toivel in a mikvah, already that night he becomes tohor, and that's if he sees even ba'oines. My chumre de mitzora mizov. So then Rabbi Shimon said, once it tells us in the Pasuk that the Zav has to leave the Machane, so then why do we have to then teach that the Mitzora has to leave the Machane? Elamai, Rabbi Shimon says, it must be that the Zav leaves the Machane Levia, and the Mitzora has to leave the Machane of Yisrael as well, all three Machanos. Ask the Gemara, where do we see that Mitzora is more Chamor than Zav? Ton, Shekin Ton, Priya Ufrima, Va'aser Betashmi Shamita. The Mitzora has things that are unique in the sense that it has what's called Priya, it has to grow his hair long. Also Prima, it also has to rend, he has to tear his garments. It also, the Mitzora is also Tashmi Shamita, marital relations. And that we don't find by Zov. Ask the Gemara, Adrabba, Zov Chamur. We find a Chumur by Zov that does not have by Mitzora. Shekei Metame Mishkav U'Moshav U'Metame Klei Cheres Beheset. We find by a Zov that in regards to the Zov, Mishkav and Moshav is more stringent than that which is by Mitzora. It's Metame the Odam, which is Metame Begodim as well. And that we don't find by the Zov. Also, when it comes, that we don't find it by the Mitzora. And also the Zov has a separate Chumrah, in that the Zov is Metame Klei Cheres Beheset. When it comes in contact, it comes to, even without contact, but its weight comes onto the clay cheres. Even from the outside, it will become itame the kli cheres, which is not true when it comes to the mitzora. So we find chumras by zov, which is not shared by mitzora. Or makro. Therefore, we have the pasuk that says zov. Should say zov. Why does it just say zov? It says v'chol zov in the pasuk that tells us to send away v'chol zov out of the machane. Why does it add v'chol? All that are zov. The rabbi is balkeri, to include a balkeri, somebody who has a seminal emission. He's compared to the zov. He also has to leave the machane, and he has to leave also the machane levia. Umitzora chamor mi balkeri, and since mitzora is more chamor than balkeri, and it says that the kol tame, the kol zov has to leave, which includes the balkeri. Therefore, we will know that the mitzora also has to leave. So therefore, we understand that mitzora is more chumr than the balkeri. Ask the Gemara, umay chumrei. From where do we know that indeed the mitzora is more chumr than the balkeri? Kedamon, like we said before, mitzora is unique and that he has to grow his hair long, he has to rend his garments, he cannot have marital relations, so it's more chumr, which does not exist by balkeri. The Gemara says, Adarabba, balkeri chumr. We find that balkeri has a chumr that does not exist by mitzora. Shekei metame b'mashu. When it comes to the balkeri, even a mashu, even the smallest bit, is metame the balkeri. Masha'en came when it comes to the mitzara. When it comes to the mitzara, it's only metame the size of a gris. The Gemara says no. Sover look. Oh, and the Gemara says, how do we know that? Sover look Rabbi Nosson. If he holds like Rabbi Nosson, the Tanya Rabbi Nosson Omer Mishum Rabbi Shmuel Zov Tzorich Kechasima Piat Amo. Here the Gemara says no, that indeed Rabbi Shimon holds like Rabbi Nosson, that we find that Rabbi Nosson says in regards to the balkeri, the balkeri has to have the size of a chasima picha amma, which is enough to cover up the whole of the amma, and therefore only that is the shear which comes out to be the size bigger than a geris, whereby you don't have that chumrah of balkeri over mitzara. V'ishkish le balkeri lezov, and we have a hekesh of balkeri to zov, that we learn one from the other. So therefore, it's left saying that indeed, but the mitzara is more chamor than the balkeri, and it's more chamor than the zov as well. The kol tzarua lamali. No, I'm sorry, and even he's not more chomer than the Zov, but he's more chomer than the Balkeri. And since Balkeri is learned out from Zov, that the Balkeri leaves the Machane Levia, so then Kol Shekain, the Mitzor would have to leave. Elamai must be teaching that the Mitzor has to leave not only the Machane Levia, but also Machane Yisrael, all three Machanos. The Gemara says, V'kol Tzarua Lamali. Okay, why does the Pasuk have to say V'kol Tzarua? We already stated additional things for Chol Tamei LaNefesh, and we also said V'kol Zov, to include Balkeri. Why does it say V'kol Tzarua? The Gemara answers, there's nothing to teach us anything specific. Aidi de ksiv kol zov, ksiv nami kol tzarua. One to teach us kol zov, that teaches me to include a balkari. Agav that, it teaches me kol tzarua, but it's not coming to teach me anything in particular. Now the Gemara turns and says, there was a machlokes in the brisa that we had quoted before, where Rabbi Shimon learns what he does from this pasuk. Why doesn't Rabbi Yehuda learn like Rabbi Shimon? Rabbi Yehuda shapir kol Rabbi Shimon. L'chora, Rabbi Shimon is saying, good. The pasuk says that you should send out from all the machanos. As it states, Vayishalchu min ha-machane kol tzarua v'kol zov v'kol tomei la-nefesh. Why doesn't Rabbi Yehuda learn like Rabbi Shimon? That each one is l'chora superfluous. Since zov is more chomer than tomei la-nefesh, and tzarua is more chomer than zov, then we will know that each one has to then leave another machane. Why doesn't Rabbi Yehuda learn like Rabbi Shimon? That's Gemara's question. Answers the Gemara, Hahumi boile lekedetan. Because Rabbi Yehuda needed this verse for the following, as it states in the Brisa. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Yochel, I might think, Dochkoi, Zovin, Umitzoroin, that the Zovin and Mitzoroin, who are Tamei, they push the Nichnas Azara, and they enter the Azara, Vapesach, Haba Betuma, in a situation where the Korban Pesach is brought, when Roiv of the Tzibur is in a state of Tuma, which is permissible in regards to the Korban Pesach. Now they're not allowed to come into the Azara, but let's say they pushed and they did so. Yochel, I'm thinking you chayavin, that they're going to be chayiv kores, like any other time that they come into the Itama comes into the Azara. Talmud loimar. Therefore, we have this verse that says, "Vayishalchu min hamachane kol tzarua v'kol zov v'kol tamei lanefesh," teaching me the fact that it states them together, teaching me that when the tamei mace has to be sent out of the machane, in this case out of the azara, that's when the zovin and the mitzaroin also have to leave the machane. They also have to leave then the azara. However, ein tamei mace mishtalchin, ein zov mitzaroin mishtalchin. But when the Tmei Mesim, like in this case, Rov of the Tzibur is Tamei, whereby they can bring the Korban Pesach, it's mutter, because it's Hutra B'Tzibur, the tomb is Hutra B'Tzibur. Therefore, they also do not have to leave the Machane, namely the Zav and the Mitzvah, and therefore they will not get Chiyuv Kores. So that's how Rabbi Yehuda learns. He needs this verse to teach us that. So that verse is not available to teach the way Rabbi Shimon learns the Kol Shekez, the Kal V'choymers, that the Zav and the Mitzorah have to leave the Machane. Omar Mar, the Gemara brings back the previous statement that we saw in the name of Rabbi Shimon, Zav v'kol Zav l'rabos balkeri. It doesn't just say Zav in the Torah, it says send out, the Zav, it says send out v'kol Zav. Comes to include even the balkeri who has to be sent out of Machane Leviyah. Messiah Rabbi Yochanan, this comes to support Rabbi Yochanan, who made two statements. The Rabbi Yochanan, the first statement is nogeh to something else. Mechilos l'niskachu. He said one teaching that those mechilos, those underground tunnels underneath the Azara, do not have the same kedusha as the Azara itself. It doesn't get niskadesh. Another teaching was nogea for us. Ubal keri mishtaleach chutz lishtei machanos, and the balkeri leaves two machanos, namely the machane shchina and the machane leviyah, just like the zov. So this will then support what we just said before. Meisvei, the Gemara now challenges this. Bal keri kemage sheretz. It states in the Brisa, actually it's a Mishnah, that the Bal keri, he has the same status as one who becomes tamei when he comes in contact with a sheretz. A dead sheretz. My lav lemachanoisam. Is it not referring to the similarity in regard to the machanois? And since the one who's come in contact with a sheretz only has to leave the machane Yisrael, therefore we'll say that the Baal Keri would only have to leave the machane Yisrael according to this Mishnah, and not like Rabbi Yochanan taught, and not like Rabbi Shimon explained. The Gemara says loy letumasam. This Mishnah is talking about that the Baal Keri is like the one who comes in contact with the dead sheretz in regards to tumasan. In regards to the tumasan, that it's not going to be other than 1 day of tuma. Ask the Gemara, tumasan, hai tumas erev ksiv bei, v'hai tumas erev ksiv bei. But in both cases, the Torah writes by a Baal Keri that it's just 1 day of Tumah, he becomes already tahor that evening if he went to the mikveh during that day. Similarly, it's written in regard to the one who comes in contact with the sheretz. He's tamei during that day. He goes in the mikveh. That evening, he already becomes tahor. So we already know it's only a one-day Tumah. So therefore, we know that Baal Keri is like a Mageh sheretz. We don't need the Mishnah to teach us that. The Psachim tell us that explicitly. Elolav li machanoisam. Rather, is it not like we suggested before that the comparison to the Baal Keri to the Mageh b'sheretz is regards to the machanois? That just like the sheretz only has to leave the machane shechina, so too the Baal Keri would only have to leave the machane shechina, and not like Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon said. The Gemara says, "Loi la'olam letumasam." Really, I'll tell you, it is letumasam. We said we already know that from the pasuk. The Gemara explains the Hokamash Malan, the Baal Keri kimageh sheretz, that the Baal Keri is like the Mageh sheretz. In what sense? Ma Mageh sheretz mitame ba'oines, just as the one who becomes tamei from the dead sheretz is even by oines, unwittingly, unknowingly. Af Baal Keri mitame ba'oines. So too the Baal Keri is mitame ba'oines. So in that way they're similar. Meisvei frek the Gemara from the following, the seif of this mission that we just quoted. On top of Samach Ches Amud Aleph, boyel nida kitame meis. The one who's boyel a nida, he cohabits with a nida, he has the same status as Tamei Meis. Lemai, ask the Gemara, in which way is the Mishnah comparing the two? If you're going to say, in regards to their tumah, that just like the Tamei Meis has Tamei for 7 days, so too, the one who's boil anida is Tamei for 7 days. Hai tumah shiva ksiv, v'hai tumah shiva ksiv bei. The Gemara says, but that's already written in the Torah explicitly. In regards to the Tamei Meis, it's written explicitly 7 days. In regards to one who is coming, who is boil anida, also he is tamei for 7 days. So we don't need the Mishnah and the Sefer to teach us that the boil nida is like a tamei meis in that regard. Says the Gemara, elalav lemachanoisam. Is it not telling me therefore lemachanoisam that just like the tamei meis must leave the machane shechina, so too the boil nida has to leave the machane shechina. And since it's talking about lemachanoisam in the Sefer, so that suggests that's also then what it's talking about in the Reisha. Umid the Sefer the Machanoisam, have a Reisha nami the Machanoisam. And if that's so, then the Reisha is talking about the Machanoisam. Therefore, when it says that the one who is a Baal Keri is like the Mageh sheretz, is in regards to the Machane. Just like the Mageh sheretz has to leave the Machane Shechina, so too the Baal Keri has to leave Machane Shechina. And not like Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon suggested that they have to leave, that the Baal Keri has to leave the Machane Leviyah. The Gemara says, no. The Gemara says, the area, what kind of proof is this? Hai kedi isei, v'hai kedi isa. This like that it is, and this like that it is. The Seif is teaching it in regards to what is teaching. The Reish is talking about in regards to what is teaching. And therefore, the fact that the Seif is talking about lemachanois has no bearing on the Reish is talking about bitumasam.